and Sherburne. Welcome to this loving community. Come in, bringing all of who you are. Bring your wounds and aching hearts, your pain too numb to feel. There are healing waters here to ease your troubles. Let go of the expectations placed on you by others and those you've placed on yourself. May you touch hands with those you love. May you experience awe, love, and humility here. May you see something of beauty and feel a sense of wonder. May you know that each of us contributes to the beauty of the whole. Bring all that you are and all that you love to this hour together. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Bruce, and I am the Ministerial Intern for this congregation. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so happy to see all of you here this morning. Thank you for being with us in worship. We have just a few announcements before we get started. First, as you already may have guessed, we are recording this. And also grab a chalice. We will be lighting a chalice together in a few moments. So if you have a chalice or a candle nearby and some matches, go ahead and grab those. Everyone is welcome to join us after the service for 15 minutes of virtual coffee hour in breakout rooms. That will happen after the postlude. I wanted to make a sad announcement to the community this morning that our beloved Dot Widmeyer passed away yesterday morning. She was at home. Reverend Nathan had been to visit her earlier, and others, many others, a lot of you who have been reaching out to her in this congregation were able to see her and talk to her before she passed away. We're all very sad this morning at the loss of Dot. We all loved her very much. There will be a memorial service sometime soon, and as soon as we have any announcements to make about that, you will hear them, so stay tuned. Just a few more announcements before we get started. As you all know, we gather donations at our church for Chaplains on the Way, Reverend Becky Shapley Hall's organization. And she has asked us to announce to all of you that really the only donations that they are looking for and can accept right now are coffee and hand sanitizer, and that's it. They can't accept your loving donations of blankets or socks or anything else right now. So if you are dropping things off for Chaplains on the Way, please only put coffee and hand sanitizer in the basket. And thank you, as always, for your generosity in supporting Reverend Becky and that organization. Next Sunday, March 14th, it's hard to believe it's true, but it is the 1-year anniversary of us moving to Zoom Church. So we can't not mark the anniversary of that. So we will be doing that in this worship service. Reverend Nathan and I are looking for volunteers to record themselves answering this really important question. Over the last year, one thing I have learned from COVID is, and you fill in the blank. So we're looking for folks who are willing to record themselves completing that sentence and send it to us this week. We're going to put them all together and make a video that we're going to show in worship next week. So just email Reverend Nathan directly. Dara's going to put his email address in the chat box. We hope you'll consider participating. Again, very short, one sentence, 10 seconds, 15 seconds at most, longer if you would like. We hope you will join us in commemorating all the things we have learned and experienced in the past year. Also, Reverend Nathan and I are leading a 2-week, 2-part spiritual autobiography class. We'll be meeting on 2 consecutive Wednesday evenings, the 17th of March and the 24th of March from 7 to 8:30 on Zoom. Check the newsletter for more information and email Reverend Nathan directly to sign up for that. And as always, there's a whole bunch of information in the weekly newsletter that comes out on Fridays. So check that for more information on how to sign up for things and more than that. And then also Sunday mornings, the email about Sunday worship that comes out. So if you are visiting us this morning, welcome. Thank you for being here. We're excited to have you join us and look forward to the opportunity to get to know you. So there is a link in our chat box that takes you to our online visitor form. If you're so inclined, please fill that out. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can get you on our mailing list and then tell you about us. But regardless, we're happy to have you here. So thank you for joining us. And now it is time when we take about 90 seconds in breakout rooms to say hello to each other. So India is going to split us up and we'll go say hi to the few people that pop into your breakout room and then come back here and we will resume worship. Thanks.
Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you lie, I will lie, beloved. Where you lie, I will lie. Where you lie, I will lie, beloved. Where you lie, I will lie. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine.
Please join us now for our opening words. You'll see them on the slide on your screen. I will be reading the minister part and Catherine will lead the response. Let us gather together,
Making a place of honesty.
where we commit to discover how to live among the ruins,
How we might move among the ruins and find what can be saved.
with our collective liberation in each of our hearts.
Let us gather up those materials we need to build and rebuild beloved community in our midst.
In gathering this morning,
May we be strengthened for what lies ahead.
please join us now in singing our opening hymn, Do You Hear? You can sing along with the words provided or simply listen.
In the heights, on the plain, in the vale,
Delighted to introduce India Wood, who will be lighting our chalice this morning. India.
Hi, everybody. I'm India, the youth group coordinator and Zoom tech lady, and I'll light our chalice today. Love is the spirit of this church and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another.
So it is time for our Wonder Box. So I'm inviting all the young and young at heart to come close to their screens so we can see what we have today. So first of all, I decided to make myself a Wonder bag. Those of you who don't know, I live a little far away from the church. I live in Connecticut, and so I'm never able to go get the Wonder Box itself from Reverend Heather. So I made myself a little Wonder bag, and that's what we're going to use this morning. So in our Wonder bag, we have a pretzel. How many people like pretzels? Raise your hand if you like pretzels. I mean, why would you not like pretzels, right? I'm sure you might have a reason, but I love pretzels. So this is like a big soft pretzel, so it's kind of squishy, but there's a lot of other ways to eat pretzels. There's smaller crunchy ones, there's pretzel sticks, there's pretzels with peanut butter, which is one of my favorite things. But for our Wonder Box this morning, I think this one's going to serve us well because it's bigger. So I have a story to tell you all about the history of the pretzel. So Easter Sunday is coming, and which means that we're in a period in the Christian church that is known as Lent. So Lent is the 40 days that lead up to Easter Sunday. And in many Christian churches, Lent is a time to be quiet and thoughtful. I'm going to put this down for a second. Many Christians spend a lot of time praying during Lent, and they often give up certain foods and other things that bring them pleasure because Lent is about learning how to be humble and to be thankful for what you have. So this pretzel right here, has its origins in the time of Lent. So to tell you the story, we have to start a long, long time ago, about 600 years ago. There was a man at that time. Some stories put him in Italy, some stories put him in Germany. It's really hard to say, so we're not going to worry about that part. But the thing that's important to know is that he was a monk. Now, a monk is a person who devotes their whole life to serving God. And the women who choose to do this are called nuns. So this monk, he worked in the kitchen of the monastery where he lived because monks back then grew and made all of their own food. A lot of them still do today. So this monk, he was in charge of baking bread for Lent. There's a very special bread that they made that was made only of flour and salt and water. And since it was Lent, he was thinking about prayer, as a lot of monks do, and especially around Lent, and he had an idea. He took the dough that he was using to make the bread, and he twisted it up, and he flipped it over, and he folded it into a shape that looked actually like this. The reason he did this is because back then, a lot of people, when they prayed, especially children, would cross their arms like this over their body. So if you cross your arms like this, you're going to look a lot like this pretzel. Like You can even see like these are kind of your hands on your shoulders. And he did this because he wanted people to think about prayer and remind them to pray during Lent. He called this little baked concoction that he had created bracelet. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but let's just go with it. Bracelet, which means little arms in Latin. And that Latin was a common language for monks at that time. So in addition to sharing them with the other monks, he also would give them as treats to the kids in the local schools when they did their prayers. So over time, bracelet became known as pretzels. And now you have pretzels today. So many people over the last several hundred years would actually eat pretzels around Easter time, believing that they symboled everlasting life and the coming of spring. They would also, and this is a really cool fun fact, they would hide pretzels along with eggs in the garden for children to find. So how many people still do Easter egg hunts every year? Well, you don't hunt for pretzels anymore, but they used to, and that's part of the tradition as well. So pretzels were really obviously associated with Easter when they were founded, but over time, they became something bigger than just a religious symbol. They also became a symbol of prosperity and health and good luck. So many people ate them and then also gave them to family and friends as a way to remember what they were thankful for, especially in a time like Lent, when it's still winter and cold and we're all waiting for spring. So now that you know the history of the pretzel and know to hold it the right way too, my whole life it's been like this, but it's actually supposed to be like this. So my homework assignment for all of you this week is to eat a lot of pretzels. Well, if you like pretzels, you can eat them. But also, I want you to think about the coming of spring. As the snow starts to melt and you start to see little buds on the trees and everything's going to get ready to start blooming again, I want to ask, what are you looking forward to? What are you thankful for? So much like people used to give these to their families and friends as a gesture of thanks, I want you to sometime this week get a pretzel or something similar. If you don't have pretzels, it's okay, but get something and give it to someone in your life that you are thankful for. Give them the treat of this pretzel or some other kind of treat to let them know that you love them and you are grateful for them. So that's your homework assignment for this week. Also eat a lot of pretzels because they're yummy, especially with mustard. And that's our Wonder Box today. So if you need to go wiggle or do something else now, that's totally okay. Thank you for listening to the story this morning. Enjoy the pretzels you're going to have this week. And we are now going to move into a time of prayer and meditation. And Sarah will introduce that part of our service for us. Thanks.
Hi, friends. I'm inviting you now into a time of prayer and meditation and quiet. Just take a moment and feel right now where you are in your space. Let yourself settle into your body. Feel the seat beneath you wherever you're sitting and feel the floor under your feet if they're on the floor. Let your body rest, let your hands rest. Join me in taking a deep breath in and letting it out again. Just relax for these next few moments. Give your body, give your whole self the gift of a moment of calm. And we'll begin with our call to prayer. The tide is rising. We'll play the video and you're invited to sing along as always, or to listen, or some combination of those. The lyrics will be in the chat box. Thanks.
The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. Now is the time in our service every week where we make space for you to name the prayers that are on your hearts this morning. Using our chat box, I invite you, when you feel called to do so, to name the prayers that are on your heart for your loved ones this morning. I would like to also take this moment to lift up a prayer for our beloved Dot Widmeyer and hold in our hearts all of us who grieve her passing. May we know that Dot's spirit is very much alive and with us and among us today, and may our memories of her be a comfort and a blessing as we carry her spirit forward. So many of us praying for Dot's spirit this morning. Prayers for the Natick High School student who passed away last night. Yes, there was a tragic car accident last night that you will all read about in the news, and a student from Natick High School was lost. Prayers for Melissa and Chris as they struggle. Prayers for Uncle Mark and his family, a little bit extra today. Prayers for Dot and Ellie together again. Amen. For Andrew and Courtney and their 14-month-old son, James. For Noah, a nephew having mental health issues. For Barbara and Jim as they grieve the loss of their son. Prayers for Claudia, a dear friend who lost her husband to illness. For Kaylee, the friend of one of us whose dad will be entering hospice soon, but was able to walk his daughter down the aisle 2 weeks ago. Prayers of grief and thanksgiving mingled together. For all those with mental health issues. Friends, as these prayers continue to come in, what are your prayers for our world? What prayers rest in your heart for our global community, our interdependent web of existence, the lives that we are inextricably connected to? What are your prayers for those, for that part of our world today? For the people of Myanmar who are struggling against an oppressive regime. Prayers for unity, justice, and compassion, for empathy and compassion, for finding a way to unite these United States. Prayers that the COVID vaccine gets to everyone. Amen. Prayers for those vulnerable in states where those restrictions are no longer there. For those in Massachusetts and everywhere who are not yet receiving the healthcare they need. Prayers that the good and peacemakers may prevail. For countries without the resources to adequately vaccinate their public, yes. Prayers for Olivia. For children as they re-enter schools, and also for teachers and parents as they all work to re-enter their children in school. And friends, what are your prayers of thanksgiving? For what are you grateful today? Please lift up those prayers in our chat box so that we may celebrate the joys as well as the sorrows of this community. Thankful for Dot's life, yes. For the coming of spring, for loved ones getting vaccinated, for Daddy's birthday, for Dot. So many prayers for Dot, for teachers everywhere, for birds, for sun and the hope of spring, for pretzels, for the wonderful Visions of Justice program yesterday. I agree. So grateful for that wonderful work. Thankful for the sun today. Grateful for Dot's untiring work on the behalf of this church. Grateful that Adam is home to rest from being a COVID nurse. Amen. For husbands getting his first shot, for the racial and immigration justice team members, for all who hold hope, for spring, for this church family, for Maple Magic. Thankful for our community and the way we supported Dot in her last days. Happy that our son Greg visited yesterday and cooked a great dinner. Thankful for family. Friends, thank you for all of these wonderful prayers. Feel free to keep them coming if they are still resting on your heart. And now I ask you all if you will join me in a moment of prayer. Spirit of life and love and that which holds all, we lift up gratitude for the promise of things this morning. For the promise of more vaccines, we are grateful. For the promise of spring coming soon, we are grateful. For this community that grieves together, that supports and loves each other together, we are grateful. Spirit of truth, open us to the holy possibilities that are available in this moment and every moment. Connect us to the promise that is emerging as we stumble our way through the end stages of this pandemic. Bind us to the earth, our green and blue home, so that as trees prepare to bloom, we may bloom also. As the air warms and the chill begins to recede, so too may our souls thaw out from a long and dark winter. Help us to wake up to the beauty of the world around us in the trees and the flowers, in the people, and in the communities to which we belong. Give us the strength to move forward in the dawning day ahead. In the name of the great love that surpasses all understanding. Amen. Let us now be still together. Beautiful. I don't know about you guys, but I could just listen to Kathleen play all day. I'd like to now invite Meryl Glassman from Dignity Matters to speak briefly. She will be sharing some information about their organization with us this morning for our offering. Meryl?
Thank you so much. I just want to thank Emily for welcoming me here today, and also Nancy Cantor for introducing me to your congregation last year and inviting me to come and do a little presentation. I believe I was actually meant to come and speak the day that kind of the world turned upside down and everything started getting canceled. So for me, it's really wonderful to kind of come full circle and be able to actually share with you all what Dignity Matters does. And also thank you, because even though I wasn't able to be there in person with the congregation, you all did learn a little bit about Dignity Matters last year. And I think they shared that on the first Zoom meeting that there was. And we were just thrilled with the gifts that we received and the kind words and the support from the congregation. So I know I only have a couple minutes. I just want to tell you a little bit about Dignity Matters and how your support has helped. So we are a very small organization based out of Framingham. We serve about 8,500 women every month around Greater Boston. And we provide them with free menstrual care, bras, and underwear to make sure that they can live a life that is healthy and dignified and confident. And the reason that we do that is because there is sort of an invisible crisis in this community and all over the United States called period poverty. And when women and girls don't have reliable access to menstrual care, they can't stay healthy, they can't work or attend school or care for their families. No matter what other resources they have, if they don't have menstrual care, they can't live a full and productive life. Menstrual care is an expensive monthly need, and it's not covered by food stamps, WIC, SNAP, or any other federal benefit programs. So every month, thousands of women are making the choice between menstrual care and food and rent. And women and girls who don't have access to menstrual care or period protection are often having to choose really unhygienic substitutes like socks or newspaper or rags, which puts them at a much greater risk for illness, infection, and incontinence, things that our healthcare system frankly can't deal with right now in its current state. So Dignity Matters has been around since 2016. We started off doing a collection in our founder and executive director's garage, and we have now grown to the point where we have our own warehouse. We have a very small but dedicated staff. And as I said, we're serving 8,500 women every month. We do that through an amazing network of more than 120 partners, including homeless shelters, domestic violence programs, schools, food pantries, and other nonprofit organizations. Now, when COVID began last year, we were serving about 4,000 women a month. And within 3 months, given the incredible need that had sprung up from the economic impact of COVID, we were serving 8,000 women a month. And we continue to serve more than 8,000 women every single month right now. We rely entirely on donations of products from our community, so menstrual care, new underwears like new bras, and donations of funds. We have a special manufacturing contract in place that allows us to buy a month of menstrual care for a woman for $2.16, which for those of you who have purchased menstrual care recently know is about 20 to 25% of retail costs. So we can serve 4 times as many women for every dollar that we receive. And I know that the UUAC is making us part of their offering this week, which we are so grateful for. As I said, last year, we received some wonderful gifts that really help us ramp up our support for women and girls. And we're very grateful to all of you that choose to give again this year to help us continue that support for women and girls. We are one of the only organizations in Massachusetts that does this work. We have a lot of women and many, many organizations who rely on us as their only source of menstrual care for women in need. So on behalf of myself and all of us at Dignity Matters, all the organizations and women we serve, thank you so much. I see that Dara and Emily put our website in the chat. Please feel free to go there. My email address is on there. Please reach out with any questions that you have. Please reach out. Again, I encourage you to learn more about period of poverty and how it's affecting women in your neighborhood, because it absolutely is. So thank you again very much.
Thank you so much, Meryl. Period poverty is a phrase I'd never heard before, and now I know it, and now I know what it means too. And as those of you who went to our Visions of Justice forum yesterday, the excellent programming put together by our racial and immigration justice teams know how much the health inequities of this country have been exacerbated by the pandemic. And Meryl just gave us an incredibly poignant example of that with her words about Dignity Matters and the people that they serve. So thank you so much, Meryl, for being here. Really appreciate the work you do and our ability to support you in that work. We will be collecting our offering as always through Realm. The link is in the chat box to your right, and you'll see here on the slide instructions on how to give. Please designate whether you would like your donation to go towards your pledge or towards our offering recipient, and then or towards both. And thank you again so much for your generosity, for being able to give as you are able. Thank you. And we'll now have our offering song.
I never made this world, I didn't even lose it, and I know no one said it was fair, but they had a garden once, they had the chance to choose it, and they gave it away, including my share, and now we're lost in the wilderness, lost crying in the wilderness, and if anyone's watching, it seems they couldn't care less. We're lost in the wilderness. You follow all the rules, you swallow all the stories, and every night you wish on a star, dreaming your day will come, trusting in allegories, and every morning, boy, look where you are, lost in the wilderness, lost, slowly dying in the wilderness, with no chance of living, boy, until you confess you're lost in the wilderness. Don't you ever watch the eagle fly to the sun and wonder how he got to feel so free? If you ever have, you know your journey's begun. Hey, what have you got to lose, boy, when already we are lost in the wilderness, and where we are headed, boy, I couldn't even guess, but off we go without a warning, running as we hit the ground, where our future lies a warning, where our hearts lay outward bound, to a bright and distant morning we can stop and look around, and there in the wilderness finally we'll be found.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Brown, and I get to deliver the reading that is going to set up Emily's sermon. This is The Season of Promise by Howard Thurman. Let the bells be silenced. Let the gifts be stillborn. Let the cheer be muted. Let the music be soundless. Violence stalks the land, soaring above the city of the dying, rising above the whimper of the starving, floating above the flying machines of death. Listen to the long stillness. New life is stirring. New dreams are on the wing. New hopes are being readied. Mankind, humankind, is fashioning a new heart. Humankind is forging a new mind. God is at work. This is the season of promise.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Yes, Howard Thurman did write in his time, so there's a lot of mankind in his stuff, but we change it to humankind when we use him today. Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for showing up this morning for yourselves, for each other, and for this community. Thank you all to James, also to James and Kathleen for that amazing offering. I'm always bowled over when they sing together, and or when he sings and she plays. So I'm very grateful for them. So here we are, Sunday, March 7th, as we slog our way through this late winter, late pandemic time towards spring, because it is coming, and the arrival of more and more vaccines because they are coming too. I'm so grateful to see all of your faces in all of your little Zoom boxes and to be with you this morning. As some of you may know, we are in the middle of the season of Lent, which is part of the Christian calendar. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So I thought I'd offer a really brief primer on what Lent is, just to ground us a little bit. So Lent is a 40-day period that starts on Ash Wednesday and ends on Easter Sunday. Lent as a term or descriptor actually does not appear in the Bible at all. In fact, the word Lent, because you knew we were going to get to etymology, is derived from the Anglo-Saxon word lengthen, which means to lengthen, and is in reference to the lengthening of the days as we approach spring. So for Christians worldwide, Lent is a time of prayer and reflection. Many choose to give something up for Lent, like alcohol or coffee or chocolate. Some others decide it's time for taking up charitable action, whether that's donating money or volunteering or something else. Still others see it as an opportunity to deepen some kind of meaningful spiritual practice. All of these examples and more are ways that Christians practice penitence and gratitude for Jesus's life and his eventual death on the cross, which Christians believe he surrendered to in order to absolve humans of their sins. Lent is also a time when many people grapple with the idea of wilderness. Many see Lent as a time to strip away the trappings of our modern life and our modern comforts and find our inner authentic self again. Now, in the Bible, there are a few different wilderness stories that tend to come up during the season of Lent, and because they illuminate the ways in which it means to be lost, to be in search of meaning or connection. And somewhat strangely, the number 40 is a common denominator. So in the book of Genesis, first of all, Noah and his family and all those animals float around in their ark without seeing land for 40 days and 40 nights. And finally, as some of you know the story well, they land on solid ground, the water recedes, and they start about the business of building a new kingdom for God. In the Exodus story, also in Genesis, Moses leads the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, only to wander around the desert for 40 years. That's right, years, before finally arriving at the promised land. And note, during that time in the desert, Moses also spends 40 days wasting away at the top of Mount Sinai, waiting for God to give him the 10 Commandments. And finally, in the New Testament, Jesus is sent out to the wilderness for 40 days without food, water, or companionship. So during those 40 days, he is tempted by Satan in a multitude of ways to prove his claim that he is the Son of God. And Jesus refuses all attempts by Satan to corrupt him. And upon his release from the wilderness after those 40 days, he begins his ministry to the world. In doing research for this sermon, I came upon another fun fact about the number 40 that I really couldn't help but share. In Italian, the word for 40 is quaranta. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is where the word quarantine comes from. When the bubonic plague gripped Europe, ships had to stay offshore for 40 days before they were allowed to dock in port. Maybe that's not such a fun fact after all, but I could not share it. But the real reason I bring up all these coincidences of the number 40 is because of something else that several others in my research pointed to. There's no biblical answer for the 40 days or 40 years or 40 weeks, but there is instead something I'll call a scientific coincidence. 40 weeks is the gestation period for a baby. 40 weeks is how long it takes for something to be born. Now, we've all been struggling in this pandemic for a lot longer than 40 days or even 40 weeks. And it can feel like we've been here for 40 years, maybe longer some days. And even though we've all been in the same pandemic, we've each been wandering in our own personal wilderness. Because no two experiences of the pandemic are the same. No two minds or two hearts can respond to this crisis in the same way. So I want to ask you, what has your wilderness looked like? What have the past 51 weeks felt like for you in your mind and in your heart? Have you thought about it? It's okay if not. It's hard enough to live it without having to analyze it. But maybe have you been like Noah, looking out every day, desperate to see some signs of life, looking for a place of safety, looking for grounding? Perhaps you've been like Moses, waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for a word of guidance, for a source of strength that will tell you what to do, for a voice that promises you that you will find your way out. Or perhaps you felt like Jesus, tormented by those voices, even just the ones inside your own head, telling you that you have to prove yourself, that you have to overcome this, that you have to do all the things, that you have to win. The thing is, you don't have to believe in a God to get lost in the wilderness. That has and will happen to all of us many times over the course of our lives. And while this past year has been painful and tedious and scary and sad and frustrating and all of those other adjectives that we could all name, it is a very long list. My hope is that it can also serve as an opportunity for something new to be born. That's my hope, anyway, with this sermon today. We can't make the pandemic go away. We can't take away the suffering that we've all endured, the loss and the grief and the anger, but we can contemplate all that we have survived so far. We may be trudging through the desert here, but we're still trudging through the desert, or floating in the ark, or whatever metaphor works for you. Take it and use it. We're still here. And our reading this morning by the great Howard Thurman, one of my favorites, definitely starts us off in the wilderness. Thurman says, "Let the bells be silenced. Let the cheer be muted. Let the music be soundless. Violence stalks the land." Even though he wrote that decades ago, it still very much feels like he's speaking to our moment right now. But then he goes on to say, "Listen to the long stillness. New life is stirring." Much like this long winter that we're all still in, new life is stirring in the stillness. New things are waiting to be born. I'll give you an example. I was reading about the new stimulus package that just passed yesterday morning, I think, in the Senate, the American Recovery Act. And along with all of the pandemic relief and vaccine support it provides, it also does something very, very important. And I'm going to quote directly from the article here. Researchers predict that the American Recovery Act could become one of the most effective laws to fight poverty in a generation. Columbia University's Center on Poverty and Social Policy estimates that the plan's provisions would reduce the poverty rate by more than a quarter for adults and this is the best part, cut the child poverty rate in half. In half. That's huge. And the likelihood of that legislation being passed without this with this Congress and without a pandemic is very much lower, I would say. And another example, as someone who will be paying off student loan debt for a little while, the conversations and potential legislation around the crippling education debt in this country right now gives me so much hope. And these conversations and this potential legislation that Biden is contemplating would likely never have happened without the economic crisis that accompanied this pandemic. And finally, anyone who attended yesterday's wonderful and amazing Visions of Justice Forum, coordinated and led by our racial and immigration justice teams, learned so much about how this pandemic has magnified and exacerbated so many of the health inequities present in our country. And there is a long road to go to repair those inequities. But this forum that we had yesterday showed me that people in power are starting to listen. To have the Massachusetts Secretary of Health and Human Services there to listen and respond to two women who were on the front lines working for Indigenous and immigrant rights, that gave me a kind of hope that I hadn't felt in a really long time. And there are countless other ways, big and small, that this season of wilderness has allowed or will allow new things to be born. So many of us are approaching our relationships with our loved ones with far more intention and care. So many of us are redefining what it means to have work-life balance for the better. Some of us are engaging far more intently in the issues of inequity and privilege that exist in this country. And we're all of us showing up in so many ways for those of us in our community who need help. And yes, we're also watching a lot of TV and eating a lot of snacks. But you know what? The wilderness is no joke. You get through it however you can. So my favorite part of Howard Thurman's poem is at the end when he says, "Humankind is fashioning a new heart. Humankind is forging a new mind. God, or love, if you will, love is at work. This is the season of promise." So as we wind our way through these remaining days of Lent and this pandemic, I invite all of you to open your heart to the possibilities being born in each of us, being born in our country and being born in our world. How can we embrace this moment, not just for what it is and what it has been, but for what it can be and where it might be taking us? What hope exists for you once you reach the end of this pandemic? What new opportunity may emerge that can make some sense of all of this struggle? What are the possibilities that we can begin to see now, budding and growing on the other end of this wilderness? My prayer today is that we all keep our hearts open to what emerges in this season of promise, because what is emerging is what will help lead us out of the wilderness. May it be so, my friends. Amen. Please join us in singing our closing hymn, "Life Calls Us On."
Here in reverence now we gather for the blessings we have known, with a pledge to one
Friends, please join me in reciting our call to ministry. We go forth into the world in peace to act with works of love, to affirm each person's dignity, and to cherish the living earth. Friends, in this season of wilderness, with the promise of spring and new life just around the corner, let us keep our hearts open for ourselves, for each other, and for whatever is to come in the days ahead. May it be so, and amen. We invite you to stay after our postlude for our virtual coffee hour for 15 minutes in breakout rooms. So just stick around after the postlude. And if you can't stay, friends, know that you are beloved and have a wonderful week. Go in peace.